Yeah, we are live, Chairman.
And we've got Mr. Kennedy has come across, I've seen, into the meeting. Thank you for that. Brilliant. Okay. Good morning to everybody, and warm welcome to you. And I've tried to find out if you're all well at the moment, and everybody seems to indicate they are. So welcome to you. The meeting is live for public viewing via the live stream. In the event of a disruption to the live broadcast due to technical issues, the meeting will be suspended until the issue has been resolved. Please can I remind all participants of the remote meeting etiquette, please. The Chairman's camera will be on at all times, as will be the PCC's. Please only turn your camera on and your microphone when you wish to speak or when agreeing or not agreeing the recommendations, so we can maintain the call quality. If your broadband connection is poor and this is affecting the quality of your call, then consider turning off your camera if it's on and only using the microphone. Please use the chat function or the raise your hand button to indicate that you wish to speak. And a member of the Democratic Services will give you a thumbs up to acknowledge your request. Now on to the business of this morning. John, can I ask you if you turn your camera off, please? Sorry, as you're, I think, the only one. Thank you very much. I'll ask our committee manager, Amelia, who's with us. Thank you for all you're doing for us, Amelia. Could you, any apologies, please?
Hello, Chairman. No, I've not received any formal apologies. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 2 on the agenda is the minutes of the previous meeting. Has any members got any comments to make? If they would, could you indicate now? I haven't received any yet. So, members, can I please ask that you agree the minutes of the previous meeting, which was held on the 15th of September?
Agreed.
Agreed. Agreed.
Anybody against?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Okay. There's nobody indicated they're against it, so the meetings are agreed. The minutes are agreed, sorry, the minutes are agreed. Item 3 on the agenda is declarations of interest. All members present are requested to declare at this point in the meeting or as soon as possible thereafter any disclosable pecuniary interests or any other interests arising under the Code of Conduct in respect of any items of business being considered at the meeting. Any members got anything they wish to declare at this stage? You can always do it before the item.
Nothing to declare.
Thank you. No, I think to declare. Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Rubini, could I just ask if you turn your camera off, please, just to maintain the quality of the thing. Thank you.
Yeah, I've just unfortunately had a Wi-Fi problem, so I've only just joined. I do apologise.
Welcome anyway, thank you. Public questions. We've had one question from a member of the public from Paul Kennedy, who's a councillor on Mole Valley District Council. He has submitted it to the PCC and he has had a response from the PCC which has been circulated. Mr Kennedy, I understand you have a supplementary question on the PCC's answer. Would you like to go ahead?
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Commissioner, for your response. And like you, I'd like to pay tribute to everyone who's working so hard to keep us all safe in these difficult times. This morning I sent you some evidence which seems to contradict some of your answers on the number of 101 calls and also your assertion that abandoned calls are due to the initial recorded messages rather than waiting times. However, my supplementary question relates more to the tone of your answer, which seems to be saying longer waiting times are unfortunate, but there's not a lot more we can do at the moment. And we are encouraging people to use other forms of communication instead. So my supplementary question is it your policy during the pandemic to deter or at least discourage people from using the 101 service?
Very much. Commissioner, obviously there were some questions asked there which you probably will need to respond to in writing later on if you need to. But the question from Mr Kennedy, are you able to give a comment now?
No, it's a very easy question to answer. It is not our policy. It is not the force policy. Quite the contrary. We urge members of the public to get in touch with us by any means which they feel comfortable, because if they don't get in touch with us, we cannot respond to their concerns. So a flat no. We urge all our residents to get in touch with us. We do say, and you'll find this at if people phone us, we do suggest right at the beginning of the call that they might find it easier if they submitted their query online. This means, as we all know, online means it can be recorded straight away. We don't have to transcribe the call and so on. But it's absolutely clear the best way to contact Surrey Police is the best way for our residents. Paul, I have received some supplementary information just now, which I haven't, in fact, digested. But I will give you an answer to that. There's nothing, to be frank, that of immediate concern in your supplementary. But you will get a reply to me. Thank you for starting off by paying tribute to the people in our contact centre and those supporting them. I'd absolutely like to reiterate that. I think they've done a fantastic job under very difficult circumstances. For instance, before COVID, we had one contact centre. At the start of COVID, we had to split up into 6 to maintain social distancing. And I believe we're now down to 2, thank goodness. But just imagine the disruption that caused. So thank you for everybody for keeping going through that very difficult time.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy, for your question. Panel, I think we've noted the question, and we obviously can reread the question and the supplementary information that Mr. Kennedy has given to us. And we'll no doubt see any response from the PCC in due course. Thank you for that. Moving on to item 5 on the agenda, which is the Surrey Police Group financial report for the month 6 of the financial year 2020 to 2021. Commissioner, are you going to hand it straight over to Mr. Menon?
I'll hand straight over to Kelvin, if I may. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Menon?
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, Chairman, and good morning, members. This is a report for the first 6 months of the financial year and a prediction of the outturn for the end of the year. And at the moment, we're predicting an underspend of just under 1 million, 0.7 of a million for the year. And that's after absorbing 2.3 million of COVID costs. The largest variances relate to pay. In particular, we're predicting at the end of the year, there'll be an overspend on pay of 3.1 million. Some of that is due to overtime, but also 1.8 million is due to a number of increase in agency costs because we recruited 30 investigative assistants to assist with that area of the force. I'm also pleased to say that the precept and uplift recruitment are both on track. In terms of COVID costs, they've amounted to 5.8 million, of which we've had 3.5 million back. That's 3.1 million for PPE and around 400,000 out of the COVID surge funding. We've also claimed another 260,000 for income loss for April to July, but we're waiting to see if we actually get that. We haven't had any money to cover additional overtime or staffing. In terms of capital, capital is forecast to be 2.5 million underspent. However, you'll see that in the year to date, against a total budget of 17 million, we've only spent 3.5 million. So I suspect that the underspend actually by the end of the year will be somewhat larger. And that is because some projects are meant to cover 2 years and therefore get shifted into the following year. So I hope that gives you a good overview of the finances and our prediction for the end of the year. And if anyone's got any questions, then I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Menon. I think we have a question from one of our independent members, Martin Stillwell. Martin?
Yeah, sorry. Sorry. Thank you, Chairman. In the original costs, there was reference to Storm, a system called Storm. And my question is simply, is this a replacement for the niche system, or is this an additional cost?
I might have to ask Alison to help me because I haven't learned all of the operational names yet. Do you know what Storm is?
Alison, I would help.
Storm is a different system. It is something separate to Equip and Niche. It is something to do with call handling and contact. We can get you a more detailed answer on that one.
I'd appreciate that. Thank you very much. Okay, so it's an additional system. That was really my
something different. Yes, that's right.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for your answer.
Councillor Rubini.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. My question is related to the same thing about ICT and the new system that's about. As Mr. Munro will know, I've been talking about rural crime for some time, and I understand now that the data collecting system on rural crime hasn't particularly worked, and they're going through a retraining program to make sure that officers understand what is a rural crime and what isn't a rural crime. What I would ask is, with this new system, will it be able to look at the rural crime flagging problem, and will it be able to properly flag up rural crime? Because, as you know, some months ago this was headlines, and in Waverley here we are very much a rural area, and I would like to be assured that rural crime is able to be flagged up and therefore dealt with.
Okay. Mrs. Barton, or Police and Crime Commissioner wanted to say something there, I think.
Shall I come in on that, and Alison Kelvin come in? First of all, thank you, John. As I'm sure you know, rural crime can be flagged up on Niche, our main crime recording system, and police officers are encouraged to. A problem. When is a crime a rural crime or just a crime? Is domestic abuse that happens to take place in a rural setting a crime or a rural crime? And so it's very often a matter of judgment, which police officers on the ground have to exercise. But there has been specific training for officers, and that will continue as to make quite sure that rural crimes are flagged up where appropriate. Alison, I don't know if there's anything more that you can add to that.
No, I think that that's comprehensive, David. I certainly don't have any more detail myself, but if Councillor Rubini wants some more detail on the niche flagging issue, we'd be happy to look into it.
Yeah, it's very kind of you. I've spoken to the local superintendent. He assures me there's a new training program going on to do exactly that. What I'm concerned with now, of course, is any input from the new systems to make sure that still goes across. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Bolton, perhaps you'd include all of Storm and a bit about the rural crime as well in our response at the end, please. Thank you.
Happy to do that.
Thank you. Councillor Povey.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to make sure I'm understanding the tables correctly in the paper. I wonder if just Menon could just put me right if I'm wrong. Because the first table under wages and salaries seems to me to show an 8 million overspend on the wages and salaries, and then at this point, and then by the end of the year that would reduce to 3,100,000 odd. And later on, I get the impression that that's covered by grant. Am I reading all that correctly?
Yes, you are reading it correctly. So it's overspent at the moment, really due to timing of actuals and budgets. They haven't quite matched up. But there will still be an overspend at the end of the year of 3.1 million. So you are reading that correctly. And that's covered by grant, it's covered by a number of recharges, and it's covered by savings in other areas of the budget. Yeah. So that's quite correct.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fury.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Following on from both Andrew and Kelvin's initial comment on overtime and temporary, it seems a hell of a lot more, and to a degree there is no breakdown of where it's occurred until you get to page 18 and you come to police officer and staff overtime. It would appear that the biggest increase in overtime has happened on staff as opposed to police. That seems odd.
Mr. Menon?
Yes. Well, in terms of actual numbers, clearly the police overtime is significantly larger in that it's £5 million compared to £1.5 million. But you're right, in terms of percentage increases, that's higher. I'll need to find out, but I suspect it's maybe because staff are covering things that police are doing to enable more police to be out on the front line. But I will need to get back to you on why there's a larger increase in staff overtime rather than police overtime.
Chairman, may I ask that this information be put to all of the members after this meeting so that we fully understand what's going on there? The biggest problem with overtime costs and the temporary situation, bringing in temps, is very, very difficult to reduce, because once you start reducing what you get used to, it makes it more and more difficult to carry out the job. Or in the mind it does, of perhaps some of our staff and police officers.
Could I just jump in there, if I may, Chairman?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I think that's a good point from John. Overtime, we have been watching for the last few years and trying to bear down on overtime budgets. As you say, once overtime becomes sort of endemic, it's difficult to reduce. We do need some overtime, of course. That is right and proper to deal with operational ups and downs. I would say also I'm not surprised that overtime for staff is quite a lot because we do have a policy of having a vacancy rate in staff. So when staff leave, then they are not automatically instantly replaced. There is a vacancy. We don't like to do that. I don't like to do that. But with the financial constraints we're under, it saves a lot of money, and so that's why we do it.
With your agreement, Chairman, may I continue? On page 21, Covert Costs, the costs are indicated at the bottom of the page under expenditure, forecast income, net forecast, and total PPE costs. I find it interesting that the national PPE for Surrey is 2.2 million, and the other local costs are 2.696 million. I would like some further information on that, because the local costs should not exceed the national PPE costs. I am quite sure.
Mr. Menon.
Yes, so can I come back to that? So the national PPE costs is the cost of PPE that the force decided to purchase to help with the national effort. So that went into a national pool of PPE, so that's gowns, masks, etc., to be distributed amongst national forces, and that was reimbursed by the government. The other local costs are costs to do with staffing, to do with overtime, to do with lost income, etc., and are not necessarily PPE costs. Local PPE are PPE costs that have been bought just for Surrey and for use within the force itself.
Did you say that included in that figure of 2.6 was staff and overtime costs?
Yes, they are.
So are you double stating this then?
No, they're distributed throughout the budget. That's why some of the actuals are higher. But this, I've just taken out the COVID costs so you can see what the actual impact of COVID is. So if overtime is incurred for COVID, then it gets charged at overtime. But we've just put all the costs in one table so you can see that impact.
So the police officer and staff overtime on page 18,
will they include some COVID overtime? Yes.
So that's included and repeated on page 21.
Page 21 just summarises all the COVID costs into one table.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Povey.
I've already spoken. I don't want to speak again. Thank you.
Okay, sorry, you've got your hand up still. Sorry.
Oh,
Councillor Foster. It's not Councillor Foster. Okay, anybody else would like to question? Mrs. Stilwell.
Sorry, my mistake. Forget it.
Okay. So it would appear there are no other members wishing to ask questions. Therefore, the recommendation is that we note the report. Is everybody in agreement, please?
Agreed.
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 Thank you very much indeed. It's agreed. Item 6 on the agenda is the Office for the Police and Crime Commissioner's 6-month update and the estimated outturn for the year. Commissioner?
Sorry, Chairman, I was on mute. Yes, any questions? I'll hand over to Kelvin, but I hope it's fairly straightforward, this budget.
Thank you very much. Mr. Menon?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioner. Yes, this report's a lot shorter and it shows the anticipated expenditure for the end of the year for the OPCC. All of these costs are included in the report that we've just seen. But for the OPCC, we're predicting an underspend of £8,000 for the year. It's pretty well on budget. So I don't need to say anything else. If anyone's got any questions, then I'll try and answer those. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Here not. Amelia, have I missed anybody?
No, Chairman, there's no hands up or nothing indicated in the chat.
Thank you very much indeed then. Commissioner, we were right. Therefore, the recommendation is that we're invited to note the financial performance of the office for the 9 months period and for the year outturn. Do we all agree with that, members?
Noted.
Agreed.
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 Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. That's been agreed. Thank you, Mr. Menon. Item 7 on the agenda is the Police and Crime Plan for 2018 to 21, the progress. Commissioner.
Thank you very much, Chairman. As ever, I know you don't like long introductions, so we'll just throw it open for members to ask any questions. But I will just say that I'm very pleased with the way that the progress is. You'll see there's an awful lot going on, clearly disrupted by COVID, but we're coming out of that, hopefully, and I think the force is in a good shape to achieve the objects of the Police and Crime Plan.
Thank you very much. Councillor Povey.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I'm not quite sure where the Commissioner gets his optimism from, because if I look at Appendix A and the performance measures, this is around every one where there's a quantitative measure. From the baseline, the current performance is worse, and in particular the positive outcome rate for crimes against vulnerable people dropped from 26.5% to 13.2%, a 50% drop. So I can't quite share the optimism of the Commissioner, but perhaps he'd like to comment on why every single performance measure has worsened.
Well, that's Andrew. That's factually inaccurate. If you look at Appendix A, for instance, the very first measure, it's public satisfaction with dealing with ASB is up. The percentage of victims of crime surveyed satisfied with the police service is up. And residents who say they feel safe, that's flat, and so on. So it's simply not true. I've never concealed, and I still don't, that I'm not happy, neither is the force, with the clear-up rate. As you say, the positive outcome rate is lower than we would like, although in fact it's flatlined recently, and the police are working very, very hard indeed, which is all of what I explained at last meeting, and I assure you I'm not at all complacent. But my statement stands.
Councillor Povey.
I think it depends which you take as your base year. If you take the baseline, which is as it's described in the table as 2015-16, then it's a drop.
And so some of it is. Bear in mind, for the first 3 years of my tour, we were suffering cut after cut after cut. Your government, Mr. Povey, imposed that, and it will take a very long time to recover. I am pleased that there's more money came into the force last year. We keep our fingers crossed for the year coming, and that is having a good effect on the some of the indicators which are rising. But it will take a long time, and in an operational service, nothing is ever perfect.
I think I have to remind the Commissioner it was his government at the time when he stood and became Commissioner. So.
It certainly was, but thank goodness, unlike yourself, Dr. Povey, I now have the freedom to speak my mind. I shall take advantage of it.
Thank you, gentlemen. Councillor White.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, let me do that. On page 31 in the report, or referring to page 31, are there examples of reviews being taken on the use of the Surrey community trigger by individuals who were not happy with the outcome?
Thank you very much. I'm just looking for some. I don't know precisely from memory. I don't have this information to hand, Fiona, and I can give it to you. There were a handful that came to this office out of 30 community trigger processes since April 2019, but I can get you that information. Could I say I'm very pleased with the take-up of community trigger. It was underutilised and under-publicised before, but people out there seem to have got hold of the message. Not all of them, by any means, meet the threshold, the legal threshold, but even if they don't, it means that the particular problem is still aired in a much more better way than it was before.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I wonder if when you let us have the figures, if we could just have a brief breakdown as to what the causes for that unhappiness were as well, rather than just figures with no background information.
I'm sure that'll be fine, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor White. Councillor Elmer? Christine, are you there? Apparently not. We can come back. Councillor Rabini?
Thank you, Chairman. There we are. I think I'm visible now. I've got two questions. First one relating to the Appendix A going on page 41. I'm very concerned about the second paragraph, which is the crimes against vulnerable people, sexual offences, etc., which appears from your baseline 26.5 and then ending up at 13.3, gradually going down. We all know that in these COVID times, publicity says these crimes against vulnerable people have increased. Is there any explanation for this particular 13.2%?
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you very much. I've already said, and I'll repeat, I'm not happy with the positive outcome rate. It's too low. It's not bad, actually, in relation to other forces across the country, but nevertheless, we all wish, certainly the Chief Constable does, that it was higher. There are considerable efforts being made to raise this, problem-solving teams being formed, and so on. So I'm pleased that the last 2 years, instead of declining, they are flat. But we all want to see them going up. I would not draw too many conclusions for events over the last 8 months for obvious reasons. The whole country's been in turmoil over COVID, and so I wouldn't, as I say, draw too many conclusions. But John, I absolutely agree with your concern and the concern of every single member of this committee, I'm sure.
Thank you. If I might go on to my second question, which is quite short. At our last meeting, we spoke about the JETs, the jets, in different areas, and we were shown figures that said Waverley didn't have one. I've been to my offices, and apparently we did have one, although nothing's happened in the last 2 or 3 years. They couldn't actually give me a reason why it's not being taken forward, but they're going to re-look at it. So I wonder if other boroughs are the same. Why are they sort of put up and then not continued with?
John, thank you. You're correct on Waverley. They were very keen indeed, and there was £50,000 of money on the table to start-up costs, but for some reason they did not wish to proceed. It may have been a change of administration. I don't know. Following your meeting with the Chief Constable last month, I have instigated a review of jets, and also allied to that is the Community Safety Accreditation Scheme, which gives powers to jet officers and others. In fact, I've got a draft letter to the Chief Constable on the stocks, which I hope to sign off this afternoon, asking formally for the police to clarify and update their policy towards this subject. I'm looking for progress here. I can't force councils to take up jets, and it's not proper that I should, because some councils are absolutely right. They don't want to do it. That's their privilege. But I hope that they don't do it out of ignorance, or they don't see the advantages, and so there will be a publicity drive starting to see whether councils that they don't miss an opportunity, and that includes Waverley, of course.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to go back to some of the points that Andrew Povey made earlier about Appendix A, which is the progress from 2015 to now. I do agree with the Commissioner that obviously in that chart, the column on the right, the one for this year, you've almost got to set aside because COVID has thrown those numbers. So I agree with that. Obviously, I'm just so concerned that the positive outcome rate for vulnerable people is way down, and the potential of the public believing the police deal with antisocial behaviour and crime is down, although not hugely. And there are some other negative ones there. But when I turn to the recommendation, is we need to note the progress of we need to note the progress of the plan. I have a struggle with that if there isn't progress in some quite important areas. But I think it might be useful if the panel expresses concern on that and asks, that the Commissioner and the police redouble their efforts on this. And I know David did highlight that he's not happy either. But I do worry. I don't think we can quite sign off and say there's progress when there isn't complete progress.
Commissioner.
I'm not sure I need to add too much what I said. I agree that the positive outcome rate needs improving, and thank you for acknowledging that that's a great concern, which it is. I think the other stats in Appendix A, well, they speak for themselves. I think after 2 years, bear in mind, 5 years ago now, the police had to reorganise massively their local policing structure. The PIN, policing in your neighbourhood, came. That had considerable teething problems, and I think the force really is only just now recovering from that. They had to do it because they didn't have enough money for the previous system. So I think there's steady progress there, with the exception of the positive outcome rate.
Thank you. Councillor Hostel, we'll put that in the recommendation at the end if every member agrees with it. So we'll pick that up if you remind me if I fail to do it. Mr. Stillwell.
Thank you, Chairman. On page 31 reports, going back to the 101 calls and other methods, what I haven't seen are any numbers that say how many of those calls into your desk were not for the police and therefore effectively were wasting time. Because my feeling is if we could educate the public as to when to call the police and when to call another agency like the Borough Council or whatever, you could remove some of the load from your desk and therefore make the 101 system that little bit better.
Thank you very much, Martin. I'm not sure I totally agree with you. Yes, a lot of calls are, strictly speaking, not police matters at all, and so in a sense they are wasting police time. But everybody who makes a call, or the vast majority of people who make a call on the 101 line or do it online, actually are residents who have concerns. And as a major public service, I think we have a duty to respond to those concerns if we possibly can. And even if that is signposting the resident to the correct organisation, I think that's doing a service to residents. Now, we mustn't get out of hand here. We still want people not to call the police if it's not a policing matter, but I don't think we should take too hard a line. The force do run campaigns, a number of them, to make sure, or rather to publicise the fact that many of residents' aren't policing matters. I hope that's having some effect, but I do have sympathy with residents who don't know where to turn, and it's a sort of backhanded compliment, isn't it, that they think that police are the ones who can help.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's more my feeling is if we get that education out, as you say, when not to ring the police, it would help reduce the numbers a bit. I mean, I agree that the police can get calls and then, of course, they'll pass them on to the relevant authority with a thank you for calling them. But it's the calls in the first place that are nothing to do, well, not nothing, let's call it, could have been directed elsewhere as a first point of call. It's just the education, not so much the fault of any resident of Surrey making the call in the first place.
Yes, thank you for that.
Thank you. Our other independent member, Philip Walker. Philip.
Good morning. On page 31, there's an acknowledgement that, as was previously mentioned, breaking of the new regulations under lockdown is basically being classified as antisocial behaviour. I was just wondering whether there was any kind of breakdown or estimated breakdown of what's in terms of the increase in ASB stuff is sort of violations of the new regulations and what is possibly sort of just increased community tensions during lockdown or whatever else. I was just wondering whether there were numbers. I appreciate that telling the difference can sometimes be complicated. I was just wondering whether there were any numbers at all. Thank you.
I don't thank you for that. I don't have any numbers, Philip, to hand on that. As you say, it is complicated. When COVID started, the police, like everybody else, got a number of calls from typically neighbours who saw people not socially distancing and so on. And that was classed as antisocial behaviour, since there wasn't any other category to put it in at that time. So we had a great big spike in ASB, which wasn't a real spike. Now, what was caused by that and what was real ASB is quite difficult, and the lines are very blurred. Could I just say, I think the Surrey police have been very successful so far in policing COVID. We have the 4 E's: the encourage, educate, explain. And that's what the force leads with, and then it ultimately we enforce. We haven't yet had to impose any £10,000 fines, I'm glad to say. We haven't picked up any, for instance, illegal raves, which we've had to be all heavy about. And I think that's a tribute to the good sense of Surrey residents, and long may it continue.
Thank you. Councillor Milton.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to drag us back to the Appendix A on page 41. And to be honest, I cannot possibly agree with the recommendation that we simply note progress against the police and crime plan when the positive outcome rates for against vulnerable people is so poor. So I would ask that we actually add something to that recommendation, that we express our concerns at the low positive outcome rate, and we ask the Police and Crime Commissioner to report back in detail what he and the police service are going to be doing to turn that round. We can't simply just note it. It is too important. So I'd ask that we would add that to the recommendation. Chair, thank you very much.
I've no problem at all with that, because what you said, Bob, is as what I think and what I've said myself.
And can I just add, I think the Chief Constable mentioned that he has actually initiated a plan to improve it, and it'd be interesting when we get sight of the plan as well. I don't know whether the Commissioner can expedite that to us as well.
I've got no trouble with that either.
Thank you very much indeed. We will, as I said, Councillor Milton, we will come back to the recommendation at the end, so fear not, if you could remind us. Anybody else? Councillor White?
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry for asking a second time. Commissioner, on page 33 of the report, you've made a reference to the prevention and problem-solving team. And I wondered if you could expand a bit on that. It looks quite interesting. So could you give us an idea of what sort of initiatives have come from that team and any outcomes?
Yes, indeed. I think it is a very good initiative. That's the team under Chief Inspector Mark Offord, a central team which tries to nip things in the bud. It's not a team for solving crimes as such. It's for solving pre-crimes, and in particular, they do a lot of statistical analysis on the hotspots for antisocial behaviour, support the local policing teams to try and nip that in the bud, and other things. It's early days yet to see whether this is working, although the indications, I'm told, from Mark Offord are very good. And you'll see on page 33 there are a couple of examples given as to what they're doing. I expect great things from the problem-solving team, and so does the Chief Constable.
Thank you. Members, is there anybody else who I've missed who'd like to speak on this?
David, I've just sent you a message asking, do you see my hand? I put it up right at the beginning, and I noticed on the list of participants it's showing, but are you not seeing it?
I don't actually have you against your name, but I've got one in a box, which is unidentified, and I've got 6 in another box. So, Councillor Fury, go on, please.
I've never been boxed in before, but there you go.
First time.
Going back to Appendix A, I must agree entirely with comments with regard to not being satisfactory. In fact, I'll go further. The percentage of forced budget spent on frontline policing is reducing year by year from a baseline of 71% down to 65.8%, with this up-to-date figure not available. If that is, if we could have that figure as soon as possible, please, David. Equally, the number of police officers on front line, can that be broken down into mobile police officers, beat police officers, and back office? Because I note on the source at the bottom of the page that that's taken from Home Office police workforce stats and Home Office definition of frontline. Does that really apply to Surrey? Can we say hand on heart that the data taken from other stats actually reflects what is occurring in Surrey? So 2 things: the percentage of forced budget spent on frontline policing, very concerned, because every single borough council I know of will tell you that their residents do not believe that the police are freely available, out and about, and easy to see. And then the number of police officers on the front beat, an inspector once said to me, all my officers are out in cars. And I said, why is that? He said, well, if they're in a particular spot and a call comes in, they can be there faster if they're in a car than if they were walking, which I thought was quite an inane thing to say. But he said it. And unfortunately, I believe that it may be true throughout the boroughs and districts that we represent. And finally, and I have to say this, David, because you brought it up, Andrew Povey would love to own the government, and you obviously don't love the government. So would you please declare who you do love? Because it's unfair to bring politics into your position and use it against a member of this panel.
Yes, sorry, John, but that's what I'm going to do. I love Surrey police. I love Surrey residents. As an independent, I can speak my mind without fear or favour. The 2 statistics that you say that
you occupy, David, you're a chair, you're the PCC, you should be apolitical.
Well, try telling that to the vast majority of my colleague PCCs who wear a party political allegiance. Let's put this party political stuff to bed. But at the next elections in May, there are bound to be candidates put up from the Conservatives, the Lib Dems, and Labour, plus some more. Are you accusing them of hypocrisy? Let's leave it at that. Can I go on to those 2 rows there? Those are national statistics. I have never believed that they represent policing very well. They're not my statistics. They're the Home Office ones. What is frontline? What is not frontline? It's very difficult to tell. For instance, we have increased our training establishment substantially over the last year to deal with the influx of recruits. Well, they're not frontline, but we would surely all agree that they are absolutely essential. The reason why the percentage of forced budget spent on frontline policing is certainly partly due to the fact that we're a very young force. Therefore, young people are cheaper, and so the people out there cost less money than other equivalent forces, and so the percentages are lower. That will increase not because there are necessarily more people in the front line, although there will be, but because each individual police officer, as they get older and get the annual pay increments, are more expensive. And I think that point covers the number of police officers on the front line. Could I just end by saying I'm expecting that this artificial statistic, number of police officers on the front line, will actually get more adverse. And the reason is the government, as you'll know, Boris is 20,000. We will get more warranted police officers in the coming to the force. And although it's not affected us yet, it has already affected other forces, a process called reverse civilianisation. They don't have enough money to hire police staff and support staff, such as intelligence analysts, but they are given police officers. And so police officers, we think, increasingly will be asked to do jobs which really should be occupied by staff. And I don't think that's a good trend at all. But I suppose one must be grateful for small mercies. At least there is a flow of recruits coming in, and I think that will increase next year, although nobody knows what the budget will be next year. And so there. So in answer to your question, I wouldn't take those particular stats too seriously because there's much more behind it than meets the eye.
Thank you. John, you're on mute.
Why are we using them then?
I think I stand to be corrected. Was you asked for them to be included? The panel asked for them to be included.
Yes, but
I'd be very happy to take them out
and replace them with actuality.
Well, perhaps that's something we can look at for the future, John. But bit by bit, the table has been built up because we've added things to it. We've added the number of police officers that appeared, I think, earlier this year or the end of last year. So we've added to it. We'll look at that again, John, and see where we are with it. Any other members wish to speak on this item before we go to the recommendation? I don't appear to see anybody. So members, then I'll go to the... Amelia, have you got anybody else who wishes to speak who's not spoken?
No, Chairman.
Thank you. Members, then, the recommendation was that we note the progress. So I've amended it, and you can argue about this if you wish. Notes the progress, or notes the report made against the police and crime pan, and expresses concern about the positive outcome rates and the reduction in other areas. Is that the agreement? Is that the recommendation you wish to have? Anybody disagree? Can you indicate now?
Yeah, Chair, can I just jump in? I think we need to add to that. I think we need to not only express our concern, but request that the Commissioner comes back to us with a detailed report on how he's going to improve the positive outcome rate against vulnerable people.
I would support that.
Thank you. We have a recommendation there. Members, are you...
Sorry to butt in, Chairman. Could I suggest you widen that? It's not just concern positive outcome rate against vulnerable people, it's against all residents.
Agreed, yeah.
Yeah, I'm absolutely happy with that. Obviously, the vulnerable people is a headline figure, but if the Commissioner wishes to come back to us with that wider report, I'll be very happy to receive it. Thank you very much, Commissioner, for that offer.
And to include the Chief Constable's plan, if we can as well. So, members, is there anybody against that as a recommendation? We note the report. We express our concerns about the positive outcome rates generally. We request that the Commissioner produces a paper, including the Chief Constable's action plan on that. And we also note the reduction in other categories on that report. Is that would people support that as a recommendation, please?
Agreed.
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 Anybody against? No, we have that as a recommendation then. Thank you for that. Moving on to item 8, which is the Inspector of Constabularies and Fire Brigades Fire Rescue Services reports. Commissioner?
Thank you. I think the table on page 44 people have seen before. The HMIC FRS has basically suspended operations for this year because of COVID, although I hope it's force inspections. And so this is inevitably a little out of date. You'll see, as I said before, Surrey Police have come a long way from where they were in 2016. But there's still more to go, and we absolutely, myself and the Chief Constable, absolutely accept that. But happy to answer questions on the detail.
Thank you. Councillor Povey, followed by the Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman. I do appreciate it's the 2019 inspection that I think we've got in front of us. I was very intrigued by one of the comments that the HMIC FRS highlighted these areas for improvement. And I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4, the fifth one down, I think it is. The force should ensure its aversion to risk is not constraining ideas and creating unnecessary bureaucracy. I thought that was a very interesting comment, and I wonder whether the Commissioner would like to say anything about how it's reacted to that comment.
Thank you. Mr. Munro?
I can't comment in detail as I don't have to hand the context. I do know that the force were not at all pleased with that grading. They didn't believe that it reflected the considerable improvements they'd made, and they didn't understand some of the comments. And I know they did talk to HMIC about that, but no, it's very difficult to get them to change their judgment. The riposte to that is next year, of course. Is it good or better?
Thank you.
Chairman, yeah, I don't really feel I've got an answer to the question. There was a specific comment in this areas that require improvement about the force's aversion to risk, and I'd like a comment back on how that's been dealt with.
I think the Commissioner did actually say he doesn't have the report in front of him, but we'll go back to the Commissioner.
It's in. Commissioner's got this list of improvement areas that we have in front of ours. Perhaps it needs to go away and come back on that one.
Yeah, I took it that he didn't have the actual detail that that table supports. Sorry, I'm perhaps guessing wrongly there. Commissioner.
Yeah, I think you've just said that. I see the bullet point which you're looking at. I'd have to go back to the original report and see the context. So I'll have to come back to you on that. As I say, the force I know didn't agree with it.
Thank you, Vice Chairman. Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Chairman. Looking at page 44. And the table, it is a concern to note that efficiency decreased from a good rating in 2017 to requires improvement in 2019. And I'd like to know what action has been taken to improve efficiency in terms of meeting current demand and using resources and planning for the future. Is there an action plan? And if so, what has been achieved so far and what more needs to be done to tackle these issues? Thank you.
Thank you very much. As I said, the force didn't agree with that measure. They thought they're better than that, but nevertheless, there it is on the record. A considerable amount of work has been done, both for the long term and for the immediate term. Efficiency covers everything, so we are going to be we've got this Building the Future project in the long term, which allows our working practices to be much more efficient and modern, up-to-date, new buildings and so on. That will take some time to bring to fruition. And on the short term, the efficiency measures I've for instance, already described, which is the problem-solving team. There are things like the Surrey High Intensity Programme to focus in on the 30, 40, 50 residents who are causing real concern and using police time and so on. We've got a programme going on which looking in great detail at our fleet to make sure that it's as up to date, carbon efficient as possible, and also that every single vehicle is being used properly. Body-worn video, BWV, that has now got into the force complete now. In fact, it's being updated, and that is bringing many efficiencies. It's absolutely transformed the investigation and responding to crimes on the street. I think those 4 or 5 examples will demonstrate the force are seizing every avenue they can to make themselves more efficient, and they have to. We have to up the productivity of police officers and staff, of course, to give the best service possible to the public.
Thank you. Could I just ask if there is an action plan to tackle these issues, and could the panel see it, so that we can see what progress has been made and what further work needs to be done to improve efficiency? Could we have such an action plan, and does it exist?
I don't think it exists as such. It's not a plan which is badged efficiency, but as I've indicated, there are a considerable number of plans feeding into that. And there's also the Chief Constable is required, indeed I'm required, to make a specific responses to the each inspection report. So I'll dig out our specific response at the time in 2019 and send it on to you.
With an update on what progress has been made in achieving those actions. That would be very helpful. Thank you.
I'll see what I could do.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Milton?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Having been through a number of HMI inspections in my time, I know how frustrating and difficult they can be, but actually they quite often get to the heart of the problem. And there will be an action plan, as the Commissioner has said. You will be expected to respond to the HMRC, and I think it'd be very useful if we could have sight of that. So thank you, Hazel, for raising that. I want to just dive down to the last 3 bullet points of page 45, and that really are concerned about how we support our staff. And there are 3 bullet points there that suggest that we could do better, particularly on occupational health and well-being and the talent programme. So I'd like the Commissioner to certainly consider what more we can do, or the police service should be doing, to ensure that it is providing that support for the staff that has obviously been highlighted as a problem. And particularly now, as we all know, we're dealing with incredibly challenging times to do with COVID. So occupational health, dealing with well-being becomes even more important. Thank you.
I'm not sure whether there was a question, but my answer is yes, I absolutely agree. I think there are very good systems in place for the well-being and health of police staff and officers, but we could always do with improvement. There was a quite interesting study done, but we asked Durham University, who specialise in this, to come and do a survey of police officers to see what their big gripes were, and one of them, a couple of them are not in this area, but one particular problem they had was a lack of sleep. And so the force are doing a lot to make sure that people actually can get the sleep that they need and deserve. And obviously, Bob, as you know, so many people work shifts, which is disruptive at the best of times. So we've got to make quite sure that they are treated fairly there. But thank you for that comment.
Well, let me just quickly come back. The question is there in that it says very clearly that a review should be completed of the occupational health. And if you link that with the other 2 bullet points, there seems to be a clear problem here that we are not supporting our staff. So my question is, Can you go away and make sure that that is happening and report back to this committee about the improvements that are going to be put in place to make sure we are supporting our staff, and particularly their occupational health services and the wellbeing services that are so necessary due to COVID?
Okay.
Sorry, I muted myself. I'm very happy to come back to this committee with that. I do know a lot of work is going on, and I do know it's one of the personal priorities of the Chief Constable to make sure that we have a happy, well-motivated and therefore efficient workforce.
Thank you. Mrs. Bolton, you indicate you wish to add.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to add on the point around occupational health, the specific point around the occupational health action, just this week, the Force launched a new occupational health hub, which is in conjunction with Sussex Police, and that is designed to make sure that it is much easier now for officers and staff to get the information they need all in one place, and it covers both occupational health and a wellbeing service. So that is in part in response to those points in the report.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Nobody else seems to indicate. I've got one question for you, Mr. Monroe, if you would please. But when we had our informal meeting with the Chief Constable, he mentioned a few statistics that he said we were perhaps sixth in dealing with sexual offences and things like this. I'm unable to trace anywhere on the system under the HMI system where we find out a national position for us in things like positive outcomes, call handling, crime recording. I heard a presentation yesterday from another PCC who said his force was top in most of these things. So it'd be very interesting to find out where Surrey features in these, please.
Yeah, the statistics do exist, but when I last looked at them, they were marked confidential. Now these are national statistics. I'll dig into it, and if they can be released, then very happy to do so.
Thank you very much. Members, anybody else there with a question? Doesn't appear so. Therefore, recommendation that we're asked to note the Police and Crime Panel report of their findings, and we've expressed our concern, which Amelia will follow up for us. Everybody agreed with that, please?
Agreed.
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 Agreed. Thank you.
Agreed. Agreed.
Yes, agreed. Thank you. Item 9, which is the Home Office review of the Police and Crime Commissioners, Part 1. As I think we're all aware, this is the Part 1 came out. Answers have been given. Amelia's attached to this item our panel response to it. The response from the Police and Crime Commissioner is on it. There's one from the Association for Police and Crime Panels. And there's one on there from the LGA. All their responses. And this should be out quite quickly, I think, this Part 1. So it's there for you to note. So I don't want to enter into any political arguments about what each of these items says. But if there are some questions that need answering, Councillor Fury's come forward on it.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to make a comment on page 61, which is the 7 preparing for Part 2 of the review, and it regards the general power of competence. The first paragraph I have no difficulty with. The second paragraph I have a lot of difficulty with, because within local government there are governance issues if you are going to be selling, developing or buying property, and that does not appear to be part of the notes that David has put together for this. So I cannot agree with the second paragraph, although I will add that you do need to turn these things around profitably. You do need to have advice, and that advice needs to be tested by a panel as part of the governance that should be in existence for your actions. So I just wanted to make that very clear. That's the only issue I have on this, but I do think it's an important one.
I'll just add that these have all been submitted, so the consultation is finished on these, so we are unable to change anything there, John. Any other comments, please? Oh, John, you want to come back on that? Sorry.
I understand they've all been submitted, but it's something that I don't think was addressed in the first consultation, in the first draft that we did of this. So I do think that when it comes back, it does need to be remembered that this particular area needs further detail and expansion as to how we manage it with the PCC, rather than having a PCC who could run amok. David, I'm sure, will not run amok, but that's not the point.
Okay.
Just you wait, John.
Thank you very much. Any other members wish to say anything on this? Is that Mrs. Bolton?
No, sorry, that was my hand up from previously. I'll take it down.
Okay. So there are no other indications for members to speak here. So the recommendation is then that we actually note the different replies, and we can say that when the part 2 comes out, we will obviously consult on that as well. So thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is 10, which is Building the Future update. Commissioner?
Thank you. The project is progressing well. It's not just a new site at Leatherhead. It's a lot of property moves as well. I'm pleased to say that I signed off a contract with our architects last week, and so there'll be an announcement very, very shortly as to who our architect partners are to build our new headquarters at Leatherhead. And I'm also pleased that we're looking very seriously of retaining our dog school, which has a national and international reputation. At the moment, it's at Mount Brown, and clearly will have to move in due course. I've also had meetings, and so have my officers and the project team, meetings with both Mole Valley District Council, their planners in particular, and their leader, and also Guildford Borough Council, because we will be moving out of Mount Brown in due course, and they've gone pretty smoothly, but there's a lot of planning to be done over the next 4 or 5 years.
Thank you. Mr. Stillwell, you have a question for the Commissioner.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Mr. Monroe, I've had experience of office moves myself. I've worked out in the 34 years of my company, I was in 9 different offices, and 7 of them were closed underneath me. And I remember it's quite traumatic times for the staff. So accountants look at bricks and mortar, they look at spreadsheets, but I'm just concerned that are the staff being kept up to date? For example, there's going to be things like excess mileage for commuting, stuff like that. I mean, with my company, they did seem to be very bad at considering the human factor. And I just want some assurances that maybe our officers are being kept up to date with everything.
Okay, Commissioner.
Yes, thanks very much, Martin. Yeah, I can give you that assurance. We've involved staff, trade unions, of course, Police Federation and so on, and officers as much as we possibly can. But you're right, Martin. You know, this will be a traumatic time. People have sort of bedded in at Mount Brown, for instance, for the last 70 years, and we're going to leave. And so some people will find that difficult. But the point is well taken. We must make sure we take our officers and staff with us.
Thank you. Councillor Watson?
Thank you, Chairman. At the bottom of page 93 refers to neighbourhood bases for Mole Valley and Reigate. Can you provide any more detail on the work started to assess the requirements for neighbourhood bases for Mole Valley and Reigate, please?
Mr. Monroe?
We wish to retain a base in Mole Valley. At the moment, it's in Pitbrook, council buildings in Dorking. I see no reason why we should move from there. but that's my personal opinion. If we do, and I don't think we will anywhere except in one district, we will certainly re-provide elsewhere in the borough, and that is my pledge as PCC. Of course, once I cease to be a PCC, my successor may well change all that, but that's while I'm around, we will have a base in each borough. One in Reigate, we have disposal plans for the existing police station, not immediately, not until the Leatherhead site is up and running, but again, we are looking at options to re-provide a base within Reigate and Banstead once Reigate goes. Again, not for 4 or 5 years, but we need to sort of start planning now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor White.
Chairman, I don't think I had any questions on building the future.
Okay, my apologies. Anybody else wishes to speak on building the future? Okay, we will move to the recommendation that we note the contents of the report, please.
Agreed.
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 Thank you. The recommendation is therefore noted. Item 11 on the agenda is the feedback on the performance meeting between the Police and Crime Commissioner and the Chief Constable. Commissioner?
I've got no comments beyond what's in the report, so happy to take questions and comments, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor White, perhaps I got it right.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Commissioner, on page 97, it's very positive to see the BAME recruits are up by 46%. That's quite a large percentage, so congratulations. Although I must admit I do always have concerns about percentages, because to take a very extreme example, if the base figure is 2, then a 46% becomes 3, and I'm sure you'll agree that probably isn't what we would want. So I wonder if it's possible for someone to send us the actual figures as opposed to just the percentage figures. And is there any reporting information available on other areas of minority categories in line with the 9 protected characteristics named under the Equality and Diversity Act 2010?
Thank you. On the first question, yes, we have a great deal more than 2 ME officers and staff in our ranks. The last figures I looked at, we were north of 5% amongst officers, and our aim is to reflect our community, and our community, the last census said 10% BAME. I'm sure it's much more than that. So we're on our way. The influx of police officers and staff coming in, of course, are really helping that. Because if you're not recruiting, it's very difficult to change percentages. Interesting point about the other 8 protected characteristics. Some are easy. The number of women in the force, which is not quite 50%, but it's not far off. We can give you that. Some are not easy because some protected characteristics, e.g. LGBT, are sometimes are very private indeed, so it'd be wrong to release any statistic. But I will say that none of the 9 protected characteristics are giving me any cause for concern in that where there are gaps, and I've talked about BAME, I'm very happy that we have the will and the plans to become even more reflective of the communities which we serve.
Thank you very much, and I do take your point about the characteristics such as LGBT, but where they can be assessed, I wonder if we could have that additional information, please, including the actual numbers of BAME recruits or personnel.
I'll do what I can.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Vice Chair, Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Chairman. On page 96, the second paragraph, last sentence, my question relates to that. What sort of restructuring in investigation structure has the Chief Constable put in place to address the 7% decline in the reduction of positive outcomes? I know we have talked about positive outcomes earlier this morning, but this does refer to specific action. It'd be helpful to know, have a bit more detail about this restructuring referred to here. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I've said all I have to need to say afterwards. But to repeat, I'm not happy with the positive outcome rate, and the committee, I think, the panel have already asked for a detailed report to be brought back, and which, as I also said, I'm very happy to do so. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nobody else has indicated to speak at this time. Therefore, we'll move to the recommendation is that we note the update on the performance meeting between the Chief Constable and the Police and Crime Commissioner. Agreed?
Agreed.
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 Thank you. Item 12 on the agenda is the Commissioner's question time. 2 questions were submitted to the Commission before, which he's responded to. One was from Councillor Foster. Have you got a supplementary to ask on it, please?
I suppose not really a supplementary, other than to thank the Commissioner for his sort of quite lengthy and candid answer, for taking up the cause on this. Obviously, this is outside this panel and his role as Commissioner's direct responsibility, but clearly delays in the criminal justice system have a huge impact on all our work, and it's vital that, you know, we're all pressuring the government for them to sort this out. And obviously, I want to thank him for taking up my request for looking at reopening Woking Magistrates Court. I appreciate Crown Courts need to be solved first, need to be the priority, but Magistrates Courts are clearly an issue, and it would be great if the powers that be could look into that as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner?
Thanks very much for that, Will. It's a matter of grave concern, surely, to all of us, that the backlog, I'm afraid, is not being tackled. I am pleased to say that Surrey courts are now back to what they were before COVID. Their throughput is about the same, but they've lost months and months and months, so been asking what their plans are for tackling the backlog, not just steady as we go. And so we'll see what happens. I should say, on the specific subject of Woking Magistrates Court, it's an interesting idea. I've certainly raised that personally with a chap called Dave Manning, who's called the local cluster manager, which is a new term to me. But anyway, he looks after all the courts in the local area, and he will be looking seriously at that. I do know, however, that the strategy in Surrey, unlike Sussex, is to utilise existing courts much better. That's their main way forward. But I'll keep on the case.
Thank you. Commissioner, I asked the second one, which was about where Surrey Police was with vetting, and you kindly arranged for a response to be sent back, which said there are 177 current vetting cases. You didn't actually reassure me that everybody is in those 177, because when we looked at this once before, there was a period where we didn't do any vetting. So perhaps you could reassure me that all our new uplift officers and all our new civil staff who've turned, or police staff who've joined, are actually in the 177 current vetting cases.
Alison, you'll correct me if I'm wrong in detail, but before someone can actually join the force, they need to be vetted.
Yes.
So I can give you that reassurance. It is a concern. I mean, the vetting industry has just exploded over the last decade, and it's a question of keeping catch up. There's got to be a process. There's got to be a systematic and thorough process, I'm happy that process is working well. But there are frustrating delays in getting people vetted. I'm sure we've all got instances of those in our own organisations.
Thank you for your reassurance. Members, anybody else wish to ask a question of the Commissioner? You may not be able to answer it directly, but he will ensure you get an answer if not. Anyone else, please? No. Therefore, we will move on to item 13 on the agenda, which is the Surrey Police and Crime Panel Annual Report. Amelia, would you like just to outline a very quick summary of why this has appeared? It's a good and lengthy report. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. So in accordance with best practice for scrutiny and transparency, as noted in Schedule 3 of the Home Office Grant Agreement, so in-year monitoring, information requirements and key performance indicators, it recommends that police and crime panels prepare and publish an annual report. So in line with that, this is our first sort of Surrey PCP annual report, and so as you can see, it's a summary of the panel's activity between July 2019 and May 2020, and includes key governance points such as the TOR, so what the panel does, its membership, agenda items, key decisions such as agreeing the precept and annual the Police and Crime Commissioner's annual report, complaints considered, the finance subgroups, key decisions as well, the budget, so the end of year budget and the mid-year claim, as well as any visits that the panel has undertaken. So yeah, I just see it as a key report, just as looking back as to the achievements of the panel over the last year, and I welcome any questions.
Thank you, Amelia. Well done for the compilation. Any questions on it? No. Okay. The recommendation is then that we actually note it, and it will appear on the Surrey County Council website.
Yeah.
Can we please note the report, please?
Agreed.
Okay.
Agreed. Noted.
Agreed. Thank you. We move on to 14, which is the mid-year PCP budget. Amelia?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. So as a sort of continuation of our yearly claim, I thank the Vice Chairman for the suggestion of including the mid-year claim as published, as although it's sent to the Home Office, just for transparency and for, public accountability, I've included the mid-year claim as a report. So as you can see, it includes the sort of travel costs, refreshments, printing and postage and webcasting, and those have all been affected this year due to COVID and have been noted. And training is one key area I'm looking at. So I'm liaising with various training companies to look at full panel training and to utilise our Home Office grant as much as possible. And yeah, so any questions, just let me know.
Any questions today, members? No one's indicated, therefore the recommendation is that we're asked to note the report. Let's agree, please.
Agreed.
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 Thank you. Recommendations agreed. We move on to 15, which is the complaints received since the last meeting. Amelia?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. So since the last panel meeting, the Complaints Committee have received one complaint, And so once I received that, as usual, I went to the PCC and the complainant to gather, more evidence on that and to pursue that. So after I received that, I liaised with the Director of Law and Governance at Surrey County Council and the Senior Principal Lawyer, and we concluded that, so in accordance with the elected local policing bodies Complaints and Misconduct Regulations 2012, that the complaint should not be subject to resolution by the Complaints Subcommittee with regard to Part 4 of the regulations. And so the subcommittee can only do that if the complaint falls under various categories. And so that complaint, PCP 0035, was not subject to further resolutions because it was repetitious and it relates to an incident that occurred more than 12 months previously, and where there is no good reason for the delay, or the delay would be likely to cause injustice. So just as stated in the report, there was no further action to be taken.
And just to confirm, it was a complaint that had been reported before anyway. So,
yeah, that's correct. So it was repetitious because it came to the panel in 2017, and we took the view that it was a sort of reformulation of that and should not be pursued.
Members, any questions for me on the complaints or the procedure there? No? Okay, the recommendation is that we're asked to note the information in the report on this complaint. Is that noted?
Noted.
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 Noted. Noted.
Noted.
Thank you very much. Item 16 is the recommendation tracker and the forward work programme.
Thank you, Chairman. So, as always, I thank the OPCC and the staff and the PCC and the Chief Exec for their, very comprehensive answers and, always following up our actions. So, thank you for that. And so, in addition, there's an annex to the tracker which includes further detail on Action R3020 with regards to, signposting to organisations such as Alcoholics and Narcotics Anonymous, so that's included. And then, so the outstanding R3120 regarding detailed breakdown on the distribution of newly recruited staff. So that was sent round last week. So that's been completed and I can remove that off the tracker. And then there's just a few actions remaining, such as R2220 regarding the Country Watch Crime Prevention Initiative. So that's being followed up, as noted at our private informal meeting. And so I also welcome any comments on the draft 2021 PCP forward work programme as included in the report. And lastly, I have received expressions of interest from our co-opted independent members to join the following. So from Philip Walker, he wishes to join the Complaints Subcommittee, and Martin Stillwell to join the Finance Subgroup. So just asking whether the panel agrees for those two independent members to fill those outstanding slots on those subcommittees.
Thank you very much. We thank both of them for their volunteering to join those committees. It's important we have an independent member with us. Members of the panel, are we agreed that Philip joins the complaints and Martin joins the finance subcommittee?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Yep, agreed.
Thank you very much. Any questions on the tracker or any suggestions? If you haven't any today, we just email them in and we can look at trying to put them in the future. Commissioner, we thank you and your staff for helping Amelia keep this going and for the return round of the information as well. We thank you for that.
Thank you very much. I'll pass that on to people in the office who did quite a lot of work.
Yep. Members, any comments or anything you want to raise today?
Could I raise one item in due course, please, Chairman, if I may?
Yep. Now, Commissioner.
Okay, thank you for that. People who read the Times or the Sun newspaper will have seen that a complaint has been made against the Force's Deputy Chief Constable, DCC Nev Kemp, and the Chief Constable has asked for another force to come in to investigate that. I've got no further comment on that, and you would not expect me to make a comment, but I just want to reassure the panel that I am aware of what's going on, taking it, of course, as seriously as I do any complaints, and we'll see what happens.
Thank you for that. Members, I still haven't got anybody indicating they wish to comment or anything, so we go to the recommendation is that we note the actions of the recommendation tracker and the input that's been put into the forward work programme, including the draft 2021 schedule. Do you agree the recommendation, please?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you very much. That's agreed. The date of the next meeting is the 5th of February, which is the annual budget meeting when we review the PCC's proposed precept for next year. It's likely to still be on Microsoft Teams, but if not, there is a Surrey County Council have got new headquarters in Woodhatch, so Amelia will keep us posted on that. Prior to the 5th, the subcommittee finance group will need to meet to with some men and go through the precept recommendation and just try and sort out any issues that we can raise beforehand. And please note that we've got a presentation from on cybercrime at 12:30. You should have details coming through shortly as to the link for that. Members, can I say thank you very much for this morning. Thank you to the Commissioner and his staff for their attendance and for the reports and for the actions that they complete on their behalf. Thank you, members, for your participation today. Seemed to go reasonably well, so thanks for that, and I'll see you all later on. The meeting is therefore closed at 12:05.